The Eagles, they got some issues with the offensive line. Between Lane Johnson, moving Alan Barbre over, all this crazy stuff. So, who else would be the best person to talk to about this than a guy who played in the NFL offensive line, Super Bowl champion, also co-host of Breakfast on Broad, Barrett Brooks. Barrett, happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday, man. And Josh, you know I'm not a liar, man, so I can only tell the truth, bro. We're in trouble.
I got to start with the Lane Johnson stuff because, I played the audio earlier of what he was saying to the media, and is it just me, Barrett, or does it sound like this guy wants to blame everybody? I mean, he's pointing to the supplement industry is not regulated. He's saying the NFLPA doesn't care about the players. The players have no rights. I mean, is this guy just going to take responsibility to keep pointing the finger?
I guess he thinks since he did that and fell on the sword the first time that, we may give him a little bit of slack because of the fact that he owned it the first time, but you got to own it every single time. You have to understand what you put in your body, and it's not just them picking on you. What about everybody else? Everybody else is taking the same test you are, and you're the only one that gets popped? Come on now. I'm just going to say this. He's a smart guy. He has means now. He's got $56 million worth of means to get whatever he wants tested whenever he wants it. So I don't quite understand how he thought he was going to get away with this. I understand. Maybe people don't understand. Maybe it's an addiction. What he's taking may not be addictive, but his personality may be addictive. He may have an addictive personality thinking he's never where he's supposed to be. And sometimes when you're like that, you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing the envelope until you see, until you get popped like he just did.
Barrett, I'm a former personal trainer. I have 3 certifications, and I heard a lot of the things that Barrett has said in the media, a lot of the things that people have said about him taking the amino acids and the peptides and everything. And from my experience, there are plenty of clean supplement companies. The whole industry is in this corrupt, convoluted mess like Lane's paying it out to be. Doesn't it come down to the player just needs to be more responsible for what they put in their body?
Well, it doesn't make a difference what me or you say. He's going to have to take responsibility of what he puts in his body, period, point blank. That's the way the league has made it. And let me say this also. It may be just that he did send the label or whatever to whatever it is they have with the NFLPA or whatever. He may have sent it to them, and they may have said it's right, but it still doesn't change the fact that it might have been something wrong. And, supplement companies do it all the time. They might find a cheaper product, so they don't change the label just because they found a cheaper product to make the product with. You don't necessarily know that. So, that might be the case, but you're still responsible for what you put in your body. So, at the end of the day, he's going to hold a lot of the entirety of what's going to happen. And, it may be the fact that maybe he did. Then if that's the case, they should shoulder some of the responsibility also. Maybe they should cut his fine down as opposed to him just taking the whole 10 games. Maybe they cut it to 5, since, he did take something that was on the list to say he could take it. So I'm going to wait and see what happens. But at the end of the day, he has to accept responsibility. He did it. And at this point, he got the fingers pointed at him, So, I feel for the guy, and he's killing the Eagles at this point. In fact, I thought this offensive line was going to be pretty good this year, even with Jason Peters being just a little bit under what he was before. He's still one of the top 10 offensive linemen in the country. So, this is going to be a good unit. Now it's going all to hell, so I don't know what they're going to do now.
Speaking of going all to hell, we saw in that preseason game, Doug Pederson says, we have the bodies, we have plenty of guys, and he starts naming half the roster at the press conferences. But, Barrett, I don't know about you, but the game that I saw on Thursday, I saw Chase Daniel becoming a tackling dummy. This offensive line's got some issues with the backups.
And we're talking about guys. There was a couple of starters out there also. We're talking about Wisniewski. He had a tough game, and you said you want to say he's a veteran guy. He should have handled Gerald McCoy. Even though Gerald McCoy is a good player, he should have handled him a little better than he did. I thought he got whooped, a lot of the times in that game. So he didn't have a good game at all. And this is a guy that, they're probably going to plug in if the rookie Salamala doesn't pan out at that left guard position. So he's going to have to go out there, play better. Salamala, he's going to have to go out there and play a lot better. And, I don't know. Barbre's spent the last year and a half at guard. Transitions from guard to tackle it's a lot harder than transferring from tackle to guard. It's easier to go from tackle to guard because there's a lot less space you have to handle. But when you go from guard in that little space out to tackle, where it's a lot more space, you got a lot better athletes you're going to be playing against. This is a tough transition that they're asking this guy to go in and play.
Yeah, isn't it unfair? Because Doug Pederson makes it sound like, oh, it's like riding a bike. He just needs to get reps. I mean, he's not just moving from guard to tackle, Barrett, but he's moving from one side of the line to the total other side.
Yeah, well, that's not the big thing. The big thing is the space in which you have to protect. Like when you're a tackle, you play the game backwards. And, if you lined up a defensive end and an offensive tackle and they ran the 40, the defensive end would blow the offensive tackle out all day. But now when you're in the game, you're asking the defensive tackle to back up while the defensive end is running forward. And you're asking him to cut him off at the pass, block him, keep him outside, and solidify it outside. That's a tall order to ask a guy from going from the inside guard where you're surrounded by two people and it's a lot less space that you have to fight at. When you're out there at tackle, there's a lot more space and there's a lot more responsibility. Even though it's not the blind side, it's right in front of the quarterback. His block is going to determine where the ball is going to go and how fast it's going to go out, simply by him playing either strong and intense, or if he goes out there and falters a little bit, it's right in the quarterback's face where it's going to hurry up a lot of those reads.
We're talking with Barrett Brooks, co-host of Breakfast on Broad, weekdays from 6 to 8 on the Comcast Network. He also does coverage for the Eagles or for CSN Philly. Barrett, I want to ask you as well with this offensive line, it seems like they're going to be using a lot of the tight ends. Can you speak to how having, 2 tight end, 3 tight end sets can alleviate the offensive line a little bit?
Well, it's going to help simply because you have some pretty good tight ends. A guy that's emerging in this camp is Trey Burton. He's one of the multifaceted guys. He has to be the Swiss Army blade of the offense. He's got to play fullback. He's going to play in the slot. He's a good enough athlete. He can go out there and run routes. From the backfield, he's going to play fullback. He can also line up on the line. So he's going to be a jack-of-all-trades guy that they're going to have to put in a lot of positions. And he's fast enough and is a good enough athlete that creates matchup differences that the defenses hate. Of course, you got a guy like Zach Ertz. He can put in the slot. You can put him back there also, which is another matchup nightmare for most defenses. Now you have to pick. Are you going to put a linebacker on Trey and Zach? Or do you put a safety on him and he can post them guys up? These guys are the in-between guys the defenses hate, I'm telling you, because you put a linebacker on either Trey or you put one on Ertz. These guys can outrun them and are better athletes than most of these linebackers. But then you put a safety on them who's smaller. Now they can post them up. They can push them around in the pass route. They can block them. So it depends on what he wants to do. It'll be in their best interest to have 3 tight ends, which is 13 personnel, 1 running back, 3 tight ends, or 12 personnel, 1 running back, and 2 tight ends. That way you can keep the defense off balance, keep them guessing because it's a heavy run formation, but you could run simple pass plays out of it simply because these guys are quick enough and fast enough to get out on the routes.
This weekend we heard the news about Carson Wentz. He's got a hairline fracture in his rib. What was your initial reaction to the news?
Oh, this is the NFL. And if you continue to let this guy go out there and play with an inferior off the line, that's exactly what's going to happen. Even though the play that he got hit on, he was inside the pocket, and that was actually his read. And if you look at the play, I believe that the fullback or the running back should have got out his break a little faster. Once he passed that blitzer, you now have to turn your head fast enough to understand you're probably going to get the ball, because once you pass the blitzer, that means the quarterback's going to throw into the blitz because they're vacating a zone in that defense. So he should have got his head around. But then, it just shows the fire that Carson Wentz has. He went out there and executed the play and got the ball off, even though he took a shot. Well, a lot of people also saying, well, he's a tough guy. He goes out there, on that bootleg, he took the ball, and instead of him sliding, he tried to jump and get the first down. It shows he's a competitor. That's the type of athlete he is. I would compare him almost to a guy that's a running quarterback, but he can sit in the pocket. But I will say this. This is what happens in the NFL. I think Doug handled it perfectly and letting him go out there, get his bunch of bruises and play. But this is just the nature of the beast. You can't bubble wrap him. He's got to learn the game somehow. How is he going to learn the speed of the game if he doesn't get those crucial reps?
How long do you think he's actually going to be out? Obviously he wants to come be back as soon as possible. Doug Pederson said they hope that he's back before the end of the preseason? Do you think we'll see him by game 3 or 4?
I think you'll see him by game 3. He's got that young body, man. He's got young muscles and young body, young tissue, man. So those guys tend to get better faster. It's going to be up to the organization. He'll be able to handle the pressure and handle the pain of being out there. That's not the problem. It's whether the organization is going to want him to be out there, since he's the future of the organization. So it's really going to be, the organization, the Eagles, making that decision. Because if you leave it up to the player, he'll be out there practicing tomorrow. But he's got to heal a little bit, and he's going to heal a lot faster than older guys. He's got that young body, so he'll be okay. I think he'll be back by the 3rd game. He'll be healthy enough to play by the 3rd game, and he's going to need to play that 3rd game simply because, he probably won't play till, later on in the season, if any time.
Looking back on that first preseason game, we only saw the first-team offense for 3 plays. I know it's hard to judge a team too much off of 3 plays, but was there anything that stood out to you from those 3 plays that gives you hope and promise for the season?
Well, it's not enough of a sample size. And like I say, still the offensive line is really a big problem at this time. I think the running game will be fine. Kenyon Barner is going to fill in pretty good for Ryan Matthews. If he does continue to be hurt, he'll be an okay back. He showed the capacity to go out there and fill in and be effective when he's out there. Of course, you have Sproles. He can run the rock pretty good. The biggest thing is the offensive line of those receivers. If they continue to drop the ball like they did last week, it's going to be a long season. It's already going to be a long season because of the line. But these guys got to go out there, and if the ball tips their fingers, it's got to be a catch, period, point blank. I played with some great receivers, Herman Moore, guys like that, Irvin Fryer. Guys, if you throw the ball and it touches your fingers, they're going to complete the pass. And they have to have that type of mindset. All this dropping and the ball too high, if it touches your fingers, it should be a catch, period, point blank, no other way around it. You get paid to catch the ball, and that's what you have to do as an NFL receiver. I can remember going through, a week, 2 weeks at a time in practice where we didn't drop one ball. And that was correlated by Irvin Fryer telling the other receivers, look, Chris T. Jones, Freddie Solomon, don't drop anything. Fred Barnett, Calvin Williams. These guys will go through full weeks without dropping a ball. The Eagles need to have this type of mindset and go into not just in practice, go into the game, but not just in games, but in practice on the mindset. If it touches my fingers, then it has to be a catch, period, point blank. And once they get that mindset, it'll be all over. Then we won't have to worry about these drop balls, because it's really concerning. You can't really have an offense if you continue to do that. You're going to find yourself in 3rd and 10, 3rd and 15s all the time, simply because these guys aren't catching.
Does that then emphasize the point of just the need and the importance of Zach Ertz on this offense, the fact that you have receivers who are just dropping balls left and right?
It just shows the need for Zach Ertz, Selleck, and Burton to step it up and be primary receivers in his offense as opposed to just being secondary receivers. They're going to run a lot of waggle protections when they pull a guard, have the guard out there protecting the quarterback while he bootlegs out to get him away from some of that pressure that the offensive line is going to give up. They're going to run a lot of nakeds where the tight end is going to be on the line of scrimmage. He's going to push down and then go out in the flats and catch passes on these naked screen passes. And they're going to run a lot of play action. When you're a play action formation, you're going to have those big tight ends in there running play action because it gives you the effect it's going to be a run with that heavy formation. And then they're going to have to get over in the seams. They're going to have to get them with these choice routes and be available to catch the ball for Sam Bradford. It's going to be big, and they have a crucial role in this offense.
On the flip side of the ball, something that did look pretty good was at times the defense. There were certain guys, obviously Fletcher Cox is a superstar, but what were some of the things you took away from the defense that impressed you in Game 1?
Well, I saw a lot of depth out there that I didn't necessarily see. I thought Means played good enough that he should be considered. In fact, it's going to be a hard role for Marcus Smith, former number 1 draft choice, to make this team the way Means played. He went out there, was consistent, created pressure a lot of the times, had a sack. Those are things that you hadn't seen from Marcus Smith. So he's going to have a tough road. But even though I said he was going to be one of the players I wanted to watch this year, this preseason, and that's Marcus Smith, Means has totally shined in this practice. Also at linebacker depth, Joe Walker is a pretty good player. And at the Mike linebacker, he's shown the ability to read plays, play explosive, play downhill, get double teams off his offensive lineman, and make plays behind the line of scrimmage. That's all you need from a middle linebacker in this defense, especially with this wide nine. I like the way he played last game. I'm wanting to see how he does against better competition, if they can rotate him in with the twos or maybe even the ones. See what he has, but he showed me a lot. Jalen Mills, he has a lot of work to do, but I tell you what, Watkins had a pretty good game. He's not out of this whole situation with this DB controversy. Rowe's going to have his work cut out for him because Watkins showed that he's here to play, and he had a good game last week.
In the long run, do you think Rowe is just going to eventually move over to safety?
I think he would be better suited to play safety. He's a better athlete than more safeties. But he has the mindset because he doesn't really have the hips to get out of breaks and be explosive and play the ball at the top of the route. That's his problem. He can run with guys side for side, but once they wiggle or do a route, an in route or something like that, something that he has to swivel his hips or get out of a break, he's finding a hard time to do that. So he needs more reps. Either he develops anticipation on what they're doing, or he's just going to have to move to safety because either you anticipate what's going on or have the athletic talent to be able to react off you getting beat and recover. And I don't think that he has this ability to recover or react the way the corner should be able to. Ron Brooks, who didn't have a good game, but he still has the ability to make up for what he lost on the top of the route. Those guys, have to be able to do that. Nolan Carroll has that. Those guys, McKell, they all have that ability to do that. He doesn't have that ability at this point from what I see on film. I think he gets beat at the top of a route. He gets beat in his routes simply because he doesn't anticipate well, and plus his hips don't roll as fluidly as those guys. But if you put him in safety, he can come down. He's aggressive. He can reroute guys coming across the middle. He's that type of player. So maybe they need to move him. If not, he's going to have to anticipate a little better. That means he's going to more film work to get better at it.
We're talking to Barrett Brooks, co-host of Breakfast on Broad. You can watch every morning from 6 to 8 on the Comcast Network, also former NFL offensive lineman. Barrett, I also want to ask you from the preseason game, one of the things that I saw, and I'm not trying to throw shade at the guy, but Chase Daniel, I mentioned earlier, he's basically a tackling dummy, and it's really hard to judge a guy when he's getting blasted every other play. Is there anything positive we can take away from Chase Daniel except for the fact that the guy is tougher than we thought?
Well, at this point, Chase is just he's just an average, not even average, he's a below average quarterback who understands his self-limitations. He's too short at this point to play inside the pocket, so he has to find those passing lanes. And when you have an inferior offensive line, it's hard for you to find those passing lanes because you're so short. So you get pushed out in the pocket a lot. You might have a lot more sacks simply because you can't see over a taller offensive line. So he's going to have his work cut out for him in trying to get a spot on this roster. I mean, not a spot on the roster because he's getting paid a lot of money, but for him to go out and perform, he's got to do a lot more just to go out there and perform than most people. So we'll see. I just think he played. I think he played up his expectation to what his athletic talent gives him. He's just not that good to think that he can be a starter on this team. Period, point blank. He can't be a starter. He's a reliable backup that understands how to run that offense. But he's not a guy that you can count on for games at a time. He's not a Sanchez. You can count on Sanchez playing a couple of games in a row. You can't count on him doing a couple of games in a row because teams, they will stop rushing him. They'll just play the ball right there at the line of scrimmage and dare him to throw over the top of those guys. And that's a game plan I think a lot of teams will implement when he's a starter in a game.
Barrett, looking ahead to the second game this week, what are some of the things or the guys that you're going to highlight and look at coming into the second game?
Well, we have to go into the offensive line. Big V, Selmala, these guys have to go out there and influence the game. They have to go out there and show that they're ready to fight and want to replace somebody on this roster. And that's the big thing. They have to be able to do it. So we'll see if they have the ability to go out there and do it. Another thing is I like the fact that you're going out and everybody's competing. You know, the wide receiver position, people are competing. Randall hasn't showed that he should be a starter at this point on this team. He was lax in his routes. You got guys trying to fight for that. Givens trying to fight for a spot. Huff's trying to fight for a spot. You go on the defensive side of the ball at DB. You got Rowe trying to fight for a spot. Watkins trying to fight. There's so many positions that are up in the air. Where do you get, who's going to step up and be that starter? Where do you find a starter with these backups? I want to see who's going to step up. At this point, I don't see many taking it and running with it. Not on the offensive line, not a receiver, and not a DB. So we'll see, You got guys like Chris Marigold's making instant impacts in there. You have guys like Means going out and rushing the pass, showing that he needs to be on the team. Joe Walker going out there, being an influence out there, playing very, very hard. There's a lot of guys that are trying to show they're on the team, but not in the crucial positions like wide receiver, DB, and offensive line.
And finally, Barrett, before I let you go, I appreciate you coming on the show today. One of the things with the Eagles that people have talked on and off about is the coaching. Doug Pederson, first year as a head coach. What were the takeaways that you took away from the game one that you want to see if he can continue to do well in game two as the head man?
Well, he managed the game. He showed that he's an NFL head coach. I didn't feel as though I was watching a rookie head coach. I felt as though I was watching a head coach in the NFL. There wasn't a time in there that I didn't think he was acting like a head coach. He looked like he was, ready for the spotlight, ready to go out there and dictate and govern his team. I liked it. From what he showed that, hey, he's that guy. So I like what he's doing, but, the he's not on him yet. I want to see we're going into week 4, week 5, and they may have lost 3 out of the 5 games. When the city of Philadelphia is going to be hot on him, wanting to see Carson Wentz, and he's not putting them in there. I want to see when you got a 2-minute drill trying to go into the half or at the end of the game where he has used clock management. These are all things the NFL head coaches have to be good at and have to go out there and dictate. Does he have it? Can he go on the other side of the field with Schwartz and really dictate to him, hey, I want you to send this blitz? Will he let Schwartz just run the whole thing and just stay on one side of the field? I'm really trying to see what type of coach is going to be. And, at this point, Doug has shown the capacity that he can do it. So we'll see.
We're talking with Barrett Brooks. You can catch him every morning from 6 to 8 on the Comcast Network. Appreciate you joining me, and stay hydrated, okay?
For sure, Josh. Hey, you and Damian, man, keep it up, man, and good job today, bro.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Catch you next week.